So I wanted to build a little video, kind of doing those demo trades. Um, Again, this is position margin of about $1,500, and this allows people to see, the perceived fear or greed that we might encounter. Keep in mind, generally speaking, for a position to get into nice profits, we generally will have to deal with some degree of downside, right? So there's emotion and psychology behind how you react to negative numbers on the screen, and I think it has everything to do with a person's relationship with money. um, you know, what does it look like and how do you feel when you see your balance $100 into the negative? Um, how do you feel when you see your balance $1,000 into the negative? 10,000, right? I don't know if I'm gonna talk to anybody that goes that high with actual leveraged products, but I know there's a couple of us that are at that level where we might see a $10,000 swing. And I think the reality is you have to be willing to handle a degree of downside in order for you to participate in the upside, right? Because these are volatile assets, extremely volatile assets. And the same volatility that creates the negative emotion is the same volatility that we enjoy that allows for our positive emotion, right? The same emotion and the same volatility that comes with fear, or that brings fear, is the same exact volatility that brings joy, and or if you want to call it euphoria. So I do my best, regardless of the monetary amount, to just concentrate on data and not allow numbers in cash value to dictate how I feel about something. And that's very hard because when you see numbers fluctuate, and I read this in the book Market Wizards, which is an oldie but a goodie, some of the best traders, of all time, right? Some of the greats. But in that book, they talk about looking at points as more of a score and less of an equivalent to what you could have bought or what you could buy with that money. The moment you begin to equate this money with, I just lost the equivalent of an amazing night out at an amazing restaurant, I just lost the equivalent of an amazing vacation, especially on the losing side, is the moment that this game becomes very, very difficult for you to play. I think that emotional control is probably the biggest challenge for most people. It's what keeps them out. As I mentioned the other day, and as I'm sure I mention quite often, I think the thing that allows us to play this game and to not lose our sanity is the fact that we do fortunately have some pretty strong, accurate data that allows us to capitalize on this space. It allows us to capitalize in TradFi as well, right, through traditional options. So a big part of what I shared yesterday is what you can do with $1,000 organic capital position over the course of a day. And numerous times, the gains were overall relatively small, right? They were about, I don't know, $400, several times over. And I did that because I think there's a lot of people that start from a place of not wanting, and rightly so, not wanting to put too much at risk. And I'm a proponent of that. I do believe that we should not put more money at risk than we can afford to play with, than we can afford to lose. It has to be a balance of, this will not psychologically affect my emotions to the downside, to the negative, toward depression, fear, anxiety, anything that would make me unpleasant to be around with regard to my family or friends or what have you. And at the same time, it cannot be so small that it doesn't really have a positive consequential effect on your life, right? It has to be enough money to where it makes sense for you to go through, the learning process and the trading journey. And so that's kind of the way that I see it. I'm just trying to narrate, my feelings toward all of this while this trade is going. And I wanted people to kind of hear me chat about it while we see the numbers doing what they're doing. This is using, relatively sensitive, highly precise data. And this is literally the code, to how $1,000 per hour is possible. And I would say in the hands of a skilled trader, even probable. Doesn't all have to be in one trade. It can be over the course of multiple trades. And it doesn't have to be your trading journey, no trade, no one specific trade should be all or nothing, right? So one of the things I did this morning that I always kind of recommend to members to do, now that you guys have the shared charts especially, is I go on and I give myself a sentiment check. And I look at total 3, and I ask myself, are these two KPIs supporting my success or failure for one particular price direction? And so today when I chose to short Sol, it came from a sentiment check that total was blue, right? Because all of our algorithms are color coded. So those of you who are familiar with the breakout bars know that blue is bearish. Takes about 12 relatively uncorrelated metrics, combines them, and spits it out in a color that's easy for a human to decipher, right? A human can just look at it and say, oh, blue equals bearish. The robots told me so, right? And I don't recommend anybody trust them until they can trust them, until the robots or the algos, so to speak, have earned that right? A lot of your success will come after your failure, and it will come after you have a really thorough understanding of the data and how to utilize it. What I'm doing right now is definitely a more, I would say, advanced skill level, because I'm entering trades that are, I guess, where my target is to make a lot of money really quickly, right? We all love that, but it takes precision entry utilizing time frames like the 30-second, the 1 minute, the 3 minute. And it also takes identification of what's going on in much larger time frames, right? Like, what does the past 16 hours of price action look like as inferred by a 5-minute linear regression channel, right? Some of you guys know what I'm talking about. What do those metrics look like? What does it look like on a 10-minute, right? Which is 32 hours of trend data that you now are considering. What do the volatility clouds and movement monitors, for those of you who speak the DIIO language, what do they look like on the 24-minute, the 1 hour, right? I want to make sure that I'm not about to enter a trade at a dumb place according to the checklist. And in a lot of cases, we're kind of looking to capitalize on that data really quickly, right? So there are some of us who are looking to do things using 2-hour, 4-hour time frames. Maybe we just want to get out of a long-term macro position at the right time, right? With the scope being the bull cycle or the perceived bull cycle, or at the onset of the perceived bear cycle, right? We just want to get out of Bitcoin at a reasonable time because, 2 cycles in a row we failed to do so, and we don't want to have that experience again. So we've got a number of different ways that we can use this information, use this data. This happens to be high precision, high leverage. And I'm just kind of using this as kind of like demo trades so that people can see what the numbers look like in real time. And you have to be, if you want to be able to make $1,000 in an hour, you have to be really comfortable with seeing your balance go upside down to the tune of $100, right? You have to be equally comfortable. Granted, it's not going to be the experience that you desire, but you have to be equally comfortable and able to manage your emotions when your balance is at negative 148, right? If you're playing this manual trading game, again, if your goal is to make $1,000 in an hour, generally speaking, it's good practice to be willing to risk 100, maybe 150, right, to get that 1,000. And you can magnify that to whatever scale you like. That's where risk-reward ratios come into play. So I just kind of wanted to share a bit of discussion on emotions, and I wanted to kind of like share, a trade as it's live. This is one that I kind of just shared in the group just a bit ago. And I didn't really get specific on it because, the metrics change, where you might enter, where you might set your target take profit. All those things might change depending on what the algorithms infer, right? You can see change happen in any given 5-minute time frame, in any given 20-minute time frame. And the change might cause you to get out of a position. So you kind of have to keep your eye on the price action, keep your eye on what your original thesis was. Depending on your level of conviction, you may want to do things in a way that you avoid going upside down in your trade, right? You avoid having a negative unrealized profit because you'd rather just simply take your profits and be comfortable and not have to deal with that negative 150. A lot of times, you will have a good result by allowing a bit of negative price action if you have data that allows you to do so, right? So if you have overwhelming data that says, I believe, this price is going to go down and I'm willing to stomach up to a certain amount of negative price action, then, sometimes it does make sense to deal with the psychological pain of a negative unrealized profit on your way to realizing a greater profit, right? Sometimes it's those longer term trades that will bring you that. And then there might be a place where you do decide to get out, right? It no longer makes sense to get out because it's exceeded your pain threshold. And I do that too. In my case, on this trade, I'm using a volatility cloud, and I'm willing to go upside down on this trade, even now, for chance of a greater drop, right? And so I'm looking at the data, not the numbers on the screen. I could very well see this trade go upside down by a bit, and I'm going to have to be okay with that. If I see it begin to deviate from my data-based thesis, then I have to get out. And I have no stop loss on this trade, so I have to be the one to click the stop button. And how do I do that? I do that by clicking this button right here, and then it instantly sells off. And occasionally it sells off with this number being at a loss, right? If it deviates from my thesis. So I do my best to watch the charts and monitor the data, and I pay less attention to this number right here. That number is very important. If it does exceed a certain pain threshold, I may have to click, market sell in any given situation. But I have been known to be willing to withstand a lot of pain relative to numbers that affect me emotionally, right? And those numbers will be different for everybody. For some people, having negative $75 on the screen will be equivalent to jumping out of an airplane when it comes to their heart rate. For others, it takes a lot more. And so some of what we were talking about yesterday had to do with emotions and control of your nerves being equivalent to working out, right? How much do you want to bench press? If you want to be able to bench press a lot, then you have to start pushing yourself with the numbers that you're willing to experience. Not just positive, because we all love that, but also negative. How much volatility am I willing to deal with? Can I put myself in a mental space where I understand that the same volatility that brings my negative price action and causes my unrealized profit and loss to go down is the same volatility that I really, really enjoy in this space that causes the extreme growth in my unrealized P&L. So this is what is this? This is a 10x leverage short, and it is the equivalent, actually it's almost a $1,500 position, right? So I had to have $1,500 that I was willing to put into this magical internet money space, that I was willing to put at risk, that I was willing to technically lose completely, and in reality, I probably, would click that market sell button if I ended up at let's just say a negative $200 loss. If it exceeded that, give or take, in this particular situation, it would probably deviate from my thesis, and I would probably click the sell button. Not because I panicked, but because it is now defying the logic that I based this trade off of, right? So that's what I have to be willing and able to do and to interpret while this is all happening. And it's not something that everyone can do, because A, a lot of people don't have the data to even know what logic to follow. B, a lot of people don't have the emotional management skills, the psychology to allow them to see numbers flip on the screen that are the equivalent of their car payment or their mortgage, right? And a big part of that reason is because they tend to equate the numbers on the screen not to points in a video game, which is probably a lot more healthy, but to the things they could have used that money for in real life. And again, that's a very challenging situation for traders. It is the reason a lot of people cannot play this game. And it's funny to say this, but when I look at unrealized P&L, whether positive or negative, I separate it from real money in my real life. Because if I associated it to what I could have bought in real life, it will hit one of my top away value emotions, which is regret. And anytime I lose, I would feel regretful. And if I felt regretful, and I know, some of you guys have been to Date with Destiny for me with Tony Robbins and so forth. If I know that regret is one of the emotions that I'll do anything to avoid, then that in itself would stop me from ever wanting to trade, because I don't want to experience regret. So the moment that I can detach from money and I can detach from the outcome, and I can understand we're playing a probability-based game that allows me to evaluate risk relative to reward, allows me to play with any amount of capital that I want, that I feel comfortable with, allows me to mitigate risk manually and or in an automated fashion, right, using stop losses that you can preset, or even trailing stop losses, these functions right here, then it definitely allows for you to do a lot more. So I just mostly wanted to talk about some things. I wanted to talk about psychology for a bit. I wanted to share, this particular move. Again, this is like just something that I wanted to build for demonstration purposes. These are numbers I'm really comfortable with, which allow me to, just speak. I can speak eloquently without feeling that I need to be, watching charts, or I need to be paying more attention, too much is at risk, etc. And so I think people have to kind of decide, what is that number for you? But if you have all of that, then you have what it takes, in my opinion, to learn the system, to learn the game, and to make overall intelligent, relatively risk-mitigated decisions. So I show this because this trade started, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes ago. Like it started just before this video. And it wouldn't really matter how much money I put in here. I could have put 10 times as much. I could have put $15,000 in here. I could have 10x leveraged that if I had enough conviction in my skill and the setup, which we talk a lot about setups in our group. But if I had enough conviction in my skill, my ability to multiply capital, and the setup itself, then I could have put 15,000, and I could have played this in my real trading account with the real goals that I might set for myself. And so what would happen is your position margin would then go up to $15,000. Your value would 10x, right? So the amount of money that the position is viewed at by the exchange would go up. So now instead of 14,000, we would add a zero. It would be a $140,000 position. And then the difference, obviously, in unrealized P&L is in 30 minutes, instead of looking at this screen, which says I've made $199, I'd be looking at a screen that says I made $2,000, right? $2,100. It's simply a matter of money velocity, and that is the difference. So I wanted to kind of just run through these things. The beauty of what we do here is that it is possible for anyone to find value in this space, right? Now, for the purposes of joining our group at the rate that it currently is, and will not ever go below, it's not going to make sense for a lot of people because they won't have the skill, they won't have the initial capital to warrant the subscription fee. But I just like to point out that for people with the skill, for people with a reasonable amount of capital, with reasonable goals, that don't even have to play this game with 10x leverage. They could play it with 3x leverage. They could learn the game and play it with, a lot less. My point would be that those people could conceivably come in and do really well with a lot less at stake, right? They could play the game, still do really well, and have a great experience. So overall, I just kind of wanted to share some of this. As the numbers flip on the screen, these are things that people that have never played the game likely don't get a chance to learn, never really have a chance to discuss. A lot of people don't talk about the psychology side of trading and what it really takes to be a trader, right? The emotions that we go through. How do I feel knowing that this position was at $220 and now it's back to $155? What am I going to do? If it did go back to my entry and I was back at $5, which has happened, like just percentages wise, right? Pretend the money is an equivalent that works for you. But percentages wise, I've gone from that 15% gain, and I've let it retrace in some cases because of my larger scale thesis. I've let it retrace to where I'm just barely in the money. And some of you guys have done this at a really, really large scale. I do just want to share, like, how do you react when it's you? How do you react when you just had what is the equivalent of a really nice gain for you? And then how do you react with what is the equivalent of loss for you? Or you feel that gains that you should have had got taken away from you, right? So these are the things that you have to kind of play with emotionally to decide, where you're at in the process, how you feel about playing the game, and how you might perform, because you can have all the data in the world, and at the same time, if you still make overall poor decisions, more than likely you'll have a poor experience. And so I want people to have a good experience. I want people to make good decisions. And I think it comes from having good data, having education that allows you to utilize the data, utilize everything that we have at our disposal in 2024, and then it cannot happen successfully without a solid grasp on the management of your emotions, your psychology, the degree of conviction that you have about each and every individual trade that you're a part of, and the understanding that this is a journey. This is not a game that a typical person's going to come in and do really well at right off the bat. I think a great example was probably Joel, who did not trade for 4 months as he was a paying member, and he's probably my favorite example to date. His psychology was such that he just simply believed, he saw the data, even though he was just watching it, he saw it work enough to where he looked at it as a business, and he said, you know what, startups in general are willing to be upside down and not be profitable for many months, in some cases even years, in order to reach the destination of being a successful business, right? In order to reach the destination of unicorn, and some of the more well-known, right? Like the Uber guys who were eating cereal and working out of an apartment together and sleeping on air mattresses because they had the longer-term vision of what Uber is today. I can't imagine that they had that vision, but they had some vision that was much more grand. And so that's kind of what this is. Is it worth losing, falling on your face, all the stress, all the challenge, to get to a place where your skill level allows you to multiply capital? That's the question I think people have to ask themselves. We play this game with crypto, we play this game with stocks, we can play this game with options, we can play this game in the Forex space. There's a lot of different places that we can actually play this game. So I want people to be aware of that, and I wanted to make a video that just kind of goes through a bit of live price action, narrates what it looks like to experience it, talks through some of the things that you'll have to consider when deciding whether or not this game is for you. So like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and hold on to this position, and I do believe that it will continue to drop. I probably will have my pain threshold just like I do on any other trade in case things start to go against me. But overall, I'm watching a lot of sensitive data that allowed me to enter this trade at an opportune time, and that also will allow me to exit, hopefully, at an opportune time. And I'm not going to allow myself to get shaken out by short-term price fluctuations, but I will allow myself to get out of this trade even if it's at a slight loss, even though I was just up 15% or so. I will allow myself, the grace to get out of this trade if not the numbers on the screen start to scare me, but if my thesis specifically becomes invalid, right? And that is what I strive to share with people in our group. I want people to value the data in a way that they trust it, and allow it to help them make decisions based on logic, not emotion. So I hope this helps everyone understand a little bit more about us, and I'm going to probably time lapse this trade and we'll finish it out. I got to get ready to go to an appointment. We'll see what happens. So I do just want to open it up for a second so that people can see that it actually went into the negative, and that's what I call a psychological retest. Sometimes it just becomes, your stop gets hit and you get stopped out. But when your trade is ultimately successful, I do call that a psychological retest, and then we kind of see what happens, right? So I was up, percentage-wise, 15%, I believe it was. Came back down to the negative in absolute value for this particular demo. We did go to 200 and some change, and then back down to negative, and now we're back up at 100. And so we're just going to see, we're going to see where this takes us. But hopefully this gives people an idea of the emotional turbulence, involved, whether this trade is successful or whether it loses. So this is just kind of like a conviction trade. I'm willing to lose, in this instance, $38 in an effort to make a significant multiple of that, right? Whatever it ends up being, 700, 900, whatever the case is. But anyway, I just wanted to show, some of the challenge emotionally that a trader can go through, especially if the numbers that they're playing with are emotionally significant to the trader. And so, just got back from my appointment, and looks like my stop loss got blown through. But I'm still absolutely going to publish this video. I'm not in the business of hiding the fact that we can make certain decisions that lead to relatively small losses. In this case, my loss was $36 in the pursuit of significantly, larger gains. In this case, my downside estimated gain was somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000. And so that's the game we play. So I think, as luck would have it, this gives you an idea of what it looks like to have a trade get blown through. Shows you personal decisions that you can choose to make based on your thesis, based on your strategy, based on your goals. I was willing to risk my $36 from the very beginning. If I was trading more conservatively, I think we can all agree that I could have easily clicked the button when I was $200 in the green. Today I had a meeting that had much more significant financial rewards tied to it. So this was just kind of like a trade that I wanted to share as an exhibition to talk about psychology and give people a little bit of an idea of what they would want to think through when deciding whether or not this game is for you, right? Whether you're looking at being one of those people that has to be comfortable with your position being upside down $1,000 so you can make $10,000, or whether you're one of those people that has to consider whether or not you're willing to be upside down $100, $150 so that you can make $700 or $1,000. It doesn't really matter. You can play the game at any level. The principles are still the same. Your psychology will be tested to the degree that makes sense to you, right? So again, I could have essentially taken profits anytime I wanted in this particular trade sequence, but I was really more so doing it for exhibition purposes, and my time lapse was basically happening while I was at my appointment. So I've been gone for a few hours, and as you can see with that big green candle, it did ultimately blow through my stop loss. But again, risk-reward ratio, asymmetry, all of these things come into play, and I was looking for either a $36 loss or a $1,000 gain in this particular circumstance. So, not going to filter losses. We do lose. I think it's important for people to know that we do lose, and we have to be okay with that. If you are not comfortable losing ever at all, you should not try to be a trader because all traders, even the best traders, absolutely do lose. Some people are willing to play without stop losses and are willing to risk a lot and lose a lot when they are incorrect. Other people play with stop losses and they're only willing to lose up to a certain amount. We have a checklist on the DIIOelite.com website that goes through risk mitigation, asymmetry, leverage, magnification, absolute value of the trade that you're working with, and it gives you an idea of what you should absolutely consider in any given game that you decide to play and with any given trade that you decide to make. So today's exhibition was overall a failure in the goal of getting 800 or 1,000 bucks, and it was a success as an example of asymmetry. We could have easily played more conservative, taken $150, $200 profit at certain moments in time that showed up while I was making this video, and I decided to go ahead and let it play out, right? I wanted to find out if I was going to lose 36 bucks or make 800. And that is more of a set it and forget it type of trade, right? You're going to come back to your computer trading terminal and you will either have a significant chunk of money in there, your take profit will be hit and you will be happy, or you will come back and you will have paid the dear price of playing the game of trading and you will have lost your, in my case, 36 bucks. So I hope this is helpful. It's just a video on psychology. I gave people a chance to watch the money move, gave you a chance to see that we all lose, gave you a chance to think about asymmetry and responsible position sizing, conviction trading. And when I say conviction trading, I just mean that you're committed to the thesis of what your original plan was, and you're okay ignoring the volatility, and you're okay absorbing the total and complete risk of your trade going wrong to whatever degree, right? In my case, it was, even though it was about a $1,500 position, I was only willing to lose about 36 bucks. And I'm happy and at peace with that decision too. So I hope some of you get something out of this, and I have no doubt I will record others where we will see the win and we will celebrate and we will talk about the other side of emotion and psychology. But I feel nothing for having lost my 40 bucks today. And meanwhile, I was out at an appointment and it was more of a $10,000 opportunity that has extremely high asymmetry. And so I figure I'm going to go ahead and take care of that, right? And I think that's the way that we traders should live our lives. Find the asymmetry, find the opportunity, do what makes sense. In the case of this trade, it was totally fine just letting it roll. So anyway, you decide what to do with this data. You decide to do with what you wish with this game. You can play it at any level that you want. And I think we discussed a bit about what a $15,000 position would have done to the numbers, right? You have to make it negligible to you when you lose, and you have to make it worthwhile to win. There is no in between, right? You can't make it so important that if you lose, you never want to play again, and you can't make it so insignificant that when you win, you could have been doing something else and making a lot more money with a lot more certainty. So you have to find that balance. All right, that's what I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will chat with you guys later.